Of course, Peter Svidler, the outsider, will black against Magnus Carlsen, and we're going to see how Magnus Carlsen can rebound from having scored only half a point out of his last 3 games. He is now being put to the test if he wants to stay in the race. He can't allow many more losses, and the game is beginning. I'm expecting a classical Spanish Peter Svidler. A6, he has his favorites in these main lines. Castles bishop to E7. Here, the move D3, he's a specialist. He's done a video series on Chess24 about it, so let's see what line he chooses. Carlsen goes for D3, B5, D6. A system I believe they discussed in the last round of the London candidates, where Peter Svidler defeated Magnus Carlsen, but Magnus Carlsen still qualified because his rival Vladimir Kramnik lost at the same time. All of this is standard Spanish stuff. The same line has been played by Carlsen very recently against Levon Aronian in Norway chess, this very position. There Aronian got a good position. H6, rook E8 is the standard setup for black. H6 just to avoid any shenanigans with knight G5 or bishop G5. Knight E3, and now either bishop E6 or rook E8. It's always a bit of a choice. If I recall correctly, but I probably don't, I think Aronian played bishop E6 here, but I'm not 100% sure. Rook E8 is the normal move when you have to figure out how to react to D4. And Svidler goes bishop E6. Once again, D4 is a big question when black has a choice of playable lines. The most typical is to just exchange everything on D4, then go for rook C8 and hope that the active pieces compensate for the slightly weakened pawn structure. And looks like that's what Peter Svidler is doing. Blitzing out his moves, probably familiar with his position. E takes D, queen D4, rook C8. When white once again has some options, bishop to B3 or pawn to A4. All of this is still known. I know my way around here because I play the same lines with black. But let's see what Magnus Carlsen has in store. Could also consider some knight jumps. One big question is always if black is ready to leash out with the move D5, and then after E5 some bishop to C5 or knight to E4. Carlsen thinking here A4 or bishop B3, I believe, are the main moves. Let's see what he comes up with. Bishop B3, yeah, that's very typical. Allowing double pawns, trying to stop black from going for this D5 advance. I don't think black should take on B3, because then after A takes B3, his A6 pawn is pretty weak. So let's see what Svidler does. Queen to D7 looks like a very normal move. And I'm sure this position is somewhere in my chess analysis notes, but it happens quite often nowadays that you know it's in your notes, but you don't have the slightest idea what your notes say. So I'm sure the same happens to Svidler. He's analyzed his position, but to recall what the best move is here is always very different over the board. He goes for knight to D7, abandons the idea of playing D5, wants to go bishop F6, but vacates the D5 square, which allows a move like knight to D5, which to me looks a bit unpleasant. Knight D5 or even knight F5. I don't think white wants to exchange on E6, and after F takes E6, black should be fine. But these knight jumps to either D5 or F5 do look very tempting to me. And yeah, he goes knight D5. And Svidler agrees to give up the 2 bishops, banking on the activity of his pieces. Now he probably gonna play knight to C5, attacking the bishop on B3, and if that bishop removes itself to C2, then the move like bishop to F6, trying to activate on the long diagonal. Alternative route for the knight could be knight to B6, followed by knight to C4, but knight to C5 looks the most normal move to me. Svidler taking his time, slightly behind on the clock. Magnus Carlsen, we've seen it in the rapid and also in the early rounds of the Blitz. He's been playing very fast normally, putting guys under pressure clockwise. Knight C5 has been played, and Carlsen doesn't remove the bishop, but goes bishop F4 in order to stop black from going bishop to F6, activating there. And Svidler does take it off, followed by queen B6. I guess this position is very close to equal. Black has his weakness on D6, but white has the double pawns on B3 and B2. And black is threatening to activate himself a little bit with with rook to C2. I said bishop because I was thinking about the move bishop E3 here, but then queen to C6. So it's going to be hard for Carlsen to unbalance the situation. He could just play a slow move like B4, trying to fix the black weakness on A6. But overall, I believe this is very close to equal. In general, Peter Svidler, an excellent connoisseur of the Spanish opening on both sides. Not necessarily a big theoretician, even though he's also that, but he really feels where the pieces should go, and I think he's not going to be too concerned here. Magnus Carlsen taking a longer timeout. Bishop e3 looks normal, but then queen to c6, queen takes, rook takes, and this endgame should be more or less equal. He goes bishop e3, queen c6, and he keeps the queens on the board with queen to f5, trying to cause some damage by following up with rook to c1, overtaking the c-file. That's a strong move, but Svidler ignores the threat rook e8. If rook c1, he wants to go queen to b7, and for the moment everything is defended. Bishop d4, bishop f8 to cover g7. Status quo is unchanged. Black is still reasonably solid. Carlsen plays f3 just to reinforce his e4 pawn, so there's no problems with rook takes c1 followed by queen or rook takes e4. And Svidler activates his queen side, also very logical, a5. Since Carlsen didn't fix these pawns, he goes for a5 and a4, trying to exchange some material or gain some space. Carlsen avoids the exchange with b4, tries to put some pressure here. Can Black play d5? Ah, yeah, there he goes, because the b4 pawn is under attack. E takes d, and bishop takes b4. You would have to calculate a little bit that nothing's dropping. Svidler goes rook e1 first, just to make sure. Now bishop takes b4. And Carlsen has a kind of dangerous pass pawn on the d-file. He goes queen g4, threatening queen g7 mate, which should be met with bishop takes f8. Oh, there was a blunder, and Svidler punishes it with f5, a double attack against the rook on e1 and the queen. Carlsen's missed that move. He's lucky that he can still pick up the bishop on e1, but he will be in exchange down after queen takes e1, queen takes d5 with the lost position. So it looks like Magnus Carlsen is continuing his unfortunate streak here. Queen e3, threatened queen takes h6 and checkmate, but Svidler spotted that, and this position is just lost. If Svidler can keep his nerves under control and calmly continue building a passed pawn here, he should win this game. b4 followed by a3. There's not all that much white can hope for. f4, a2. This pawn is going to keep the white pieces tied up. They have to keep an eye on that a-pawn. Carlsen found the most active setup, put his queen on a4, but it still looks hopeless in the long run for Magnus Carlsen. Queen to a5, rook to d1. And yeah, there's not many tricks. Queen a8 followed by queen e4 check, then queen g6, f5 is something you could try. He goes with a queen to a4, but that allows... I was going to say something else, but a1 queen didn't yet win because the queen defends f4. Rook d2, queen e4. If queen g6, he wants to go f5, so Svidler plays king h8, queen g8. Looks slightly passive, but he still keeps all the trumps. Now he has to keep an eye on the threat of queen takes h6 check. Looks like Carlsen has sort of outplayed him here, even though Carlsen is material down. I'm not sure Svidler is still winning, and here this is a move repetition. Does he agree to the draw here? That would be a tremendous defensive effort by Magnus Carlsen. Survived this losing position against Peter Svidler. Svidler doesn't look that upset, while Carlsen looks excited that he avoided defeat there. Yeah, he's incredibly happy that he survived that one, keeping him in the race. And yeah, quite a comeback. Very tenacious defense by Magnus Carlsen. Let's see how the leaders have been doing. How's MVL playing against Vladimir Onyshuk on board number 1?